That's one way to start a season. The Pittsburgh Steelers kick off the 2021 regular season with a big win over the Buffalo Bills. Maybe a surprising win for some, a big road win for the Steelers. It wasn't pretty, but the Steelers got the job done nonetheless, as the Steelers now move to 1-0 on the year. And we kick off our 2001 regular season edition of Steelers Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Right now, live on the Steelers Now Facebook page. This certainly will appear on Pittsburgh Sports Live's YouTube channel and also SteelersNow.com. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and you can find all our Steelers postgame coverage over there as well at SteelersNow.com, where Alan Saunders was in Buffalo live to cover the game. You'll get his postgame recap. We'll have some videos for you here on PSL, and then a lot more to finish out this coverage. As a lot to discuss in this game, I am going to be joined by Jarrett Bailey, who is a contributor with the Steelers Sports Illustrated site, SISteelers, and also a co-host of the Laces Out pod that I have been a guest on a couple of times actually to this point. So Jarrett Bailey of SI Now, SISteelers, and the Laces Out pod joining me. Jarrett, first off, I definitely appreciate you joining me on the show. I was on your pod a couple of times last year, so happy to have you here in our rotation, especially for these post-game shows. Immediate takeaways. This was a game that I certainly penciled in as a loss for the Steelers. They didn't play great in the first half. Ben didn't play great in the first half. The offense didn't look that good. I saw some people turning on Matt Canada already after only one half of football. But Josh Allen tried as well, not able to really get their offense moving in that first half. Tried a couple deep passes. They weren't able to connect. They never had the timing either. Steelers took advantage of some mistakes and turnovers. Their defense showed up, and they got the victory. But just immediate thoughts before we get into everything else in this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, you pretty much just covered it. The offense looked absolutely dead in the first half. It's not as if it just, burst to life in the second half per se, but the defense really stepped up. Special teams had a big block punt. So, the offense did just enough. Chase Claypool had a big second half. Juju Smith-Schuster had a couple big catches. Deontay Johnson, obviously, the catch in the end zone off the bobble was very big. So I think that, the Steelers answered a few really big questions coming into the year. And like you said, I had it penciled in as a loss as well. I didn't think that they were going to go into Buffalo and win week one. Right. And after the first half, there was no reason to think otherwise. And then, down 10-0, they get 3 points. And then another field goal. It felt as if they weren't going to be able to take advantage when getting inside the red zone. So, but no, the defense really came to play. The secondary looks really good. Specifically, Trey Norwood, James Pierre both had very big games, which is exactly what Pittsburgh needed. So, great job by the defense. Really good stuff on special teams, and the offense did enough to get them to the finish line and get a win. And that's all you can really ask for, especially with a bunch of new guys up front week one against, the AFC's cream of the crop.
And you do expect to have to shake some cobwebs off for both teams. Most teams around the NFL having to shake some cobwebs off in week one. Maybe not as many cobwebs off as last year in a little bit more of a non-pandemic influence season, although we don't know yet. But the Steelers certainly have to shake off some, still have to shake off some. And I think it can't be understated that, yeah, you can look good in the preseason. Ben looked good in that preseason game against Detroit, but this is a whole new offensive system. Matt Canada has to administer these plays. He didn't get to sprinkle that many in last year as a QB coach, and a lot for Ben to learn, as well as for this whole offense to learn, Najee being a rookie. There was going to be growing pains, but you didn't figure to have those growing pains and still get a W against a team like the Bills, who brought a lot of chemistry. Josh Allen looking for maybe the MVP this year, certainly a sexy pick for some. They bring in Emmanuel Sanders, but Diggs still there. Singletary now stepping up into a bigger role. You figured that offense would have the chemistry the Steelers would not have. Would you say, just to classify this game, was this a game the Steelers really was able to steal and win because they really did have the defense kind of save the day, offense stepping up in the second half? Or was this maybe more, if you're looking at a Bills perspective, that the Bills just didn't play to Bills level, didn't have the chemistry you'd expect? And if the Bills would have done that, they would have still won this game and maybe won the Bills let get away.
No, I think that this is just a game that the Steelers won. If you take away the blocked punt, then, maybe Buffalo's driving to try to tie the game at the end there. So, I mean, it's just better special teams Both teams had big special teams plays. Isaiah McKenzie, the opening kickoff of the year, 70-some yards, and sets Buffalo up in really good field position. Steelers defense forces a 3-and-out and a field goal. And then, Buffalo's defense played really well throughout as well. So I think it's just, a special team score that goes against Buffalo that really just kind of changed the tides of things. But no, I mean, Buffalo took chances going downfield. It's just a matter of the Steelers secondary playing really well. Like I said, James Pierre had a very big play in which he slapped the ball out of, I believe it was Stephon Diggs' hands. So that was really big. Trey Norwood played really big. A 7th-round guy who got significant playing time in week 1. So their secondary just really came to play. Obviously, TJ Watt with the strip sack, he had 2 overall. Cam Hayward had a really big game with a couple pass breakups. So I think it's just a matter of both teams played up to level for, I think we kind of figured it would be somewhat a defensive battle. Both teams met those expectations. It's just Pittsburgh made a couple more plays than Buffalo did.
The Steelers win it 23-16 on the road in Highmark Stadium in Buffalo. So a Highmark brand that maybe you're more familiar with hearing about in the Pittsburgh area ends up being still in favor of the Steelers as they get that first victory at Highmark Stadium and get a big win over the Bills, who are certainly still likely to get things going, still likely to be good, and still likely to certainly be a contender in the AFC.
Right.
But this Steelers schedule is not maybe as easy as it was earlier in the season last year. They're going to face tough quarterbacks. They have a tough road game here. They get a win. They face a tough quarterback. They get a victory. So it certainly makes it nice for you as you go on, because there's certainly going to probably be some losses here. But again, the Steelers win it 23-16, joined by Jarrett Bailey of SISteelers and host of the Laces Out pod here on our Steelers edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I do see some of you in the comments there. Yes, go Steelers. Way to go Steelers. A lot of excitement here. And I guess for good reason after the way this game certainly finished out. I'm sure the rest of this week will be about what the Steelers still need to improve on. But TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, those veterans, Joe Hayden with even a big tackle at the end.
Yes.
Really stepping up. So the veterans, the older players stepping up. Ben even turning it on late in the game. Deontay, not old, but he's been there a while now, turning it on at the end after leaving with an injury earlier. Chase Claypool getting his footing. A game that the Steelers were able to hang on their veterans and able to get the victory. Now, you get a win. That's all that really, really matters. However, in the National Football League, you can't be satisfied. Mike Tomlin's not going to be satisfied. One thing that did not get going in this game, and maybe it's the offensive line that could be a question, maybe it's the running back that could still be a question as he is a rookie. I think a lot of Steelers fans, probably maybe unreasonably so, were expecting right away Najee Harris to be like he was in camp in the preseason and just dominate and the offensive rookie of the year and all of a sudden help your fantasy team. Not the case. Is that a concern for you? Is that something that you're assuming is going to get corrected? Or maybe is it a bigger problem because the O-line, a weakness in this game, and the O-line has been a weakness and a story for the better part of this past year. That did not look any better than what some would have thought despite the victory.
Yeah, I mean, you would have liked to see a little bit more for Najee Harris, but I mean, if you go back and rewatch everything, the Bills were stacking, putting 8-9 in the box when they knew that the Steelers were going to run it. So there's not much that could have been done there when you've got a 9-on-6 situation in the run game. Now, he did break off a few decent runs, including the 18-yard run that got them inside the 5 that set up the Deontay Johnson touchdown reception. So it's not to say that Najee didn't have his moments, but it's his first regular season action, and there were some miscommunications on receiving plays as well, where he was overthrown by Ben, and we saw Ben pull him to the side right after each play and trying to, explain things to him. So, yeah, the offensive line is, still a work in progress. We saw Ben get hit a few times, including a strip sack. But yeah, I think it's a little bit early to put the panic, hit the panic button on the run game. Najee's a fantastic player. We saw that throughout camp in the preseason. It's just that Buffalo is very well coached, especially, on the defensive side of the ball with Leslie Frazier, one of the better D coordinators in the game. And it's similar to what it was last year, where they pretty much said, we're not going to let you guys throw the short underneath stuff often. We're not going to let you run the ball, beat us over the top. Pittsburgh was able to beat them a little bit more downfield this time around, which is what contributed to them being able to win. That's not saying that they just went, bombs away with the offense, because they clearly didn't. But if it was anything between the numbers, Pittsburgh had more success this year than last year. So It's just a matter of Buffalo being well coached and taking away those running opportunities rather than, Najee Harris being a bust after one game. So I think, people just need to relax a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly not a bust after one game, but it won't be as easy as maybe he might even have thought, or some would have thought. He mentioned a lot during camp. He told us that I'm going to make up. I figure the offensive line is not going to always block for me. It's good on good. I'm going to make up for it, make plays. I'm really confident. You want him to be confident. You want him to feel that way, but it's not always going to happen, especially if you don't get the block. This is good on good again, as he said. So you're sometimes going to have these type of games. He certainly will get things going. The offensive line, though, is going to also need to improve to help him get going, to help Ben. Not exactly a stellar day for everybody across the board, even though they pick it up at times. But again, good on good. So the defense is scheming too. They knew what the Steelers were probably going to try to do. Certainly in week one, as Ben's still learning this offense, they were going to try to make it the Najee show, and the Bills didn't let them do it. So that'll be the same recipe. Likely, maybe the Raiders will have when the Steelers get back to Heinz Field. The Steelers do win this 23-16. Again, a lot of excitement here in the comments. In your face, Bills. So Jared, you can throw that to your Laces Out Pod co-host. We got a lot of in-your-face Bills.
Okay.
A lot of Steeler fans almost trying to make this now a rivalry with the Bills after last year, kind of beginning to the slide for the Steelers end of the season, and then this game here. Deflating the Bills balloon a little bit there. Saw Bills fans just piling out of the stadium there with 2 minutes left while the Bills were still trying to do something. So this is a franchise that's never won a title, lost 4 straight in the early 90s. They have maybe the second best, if not arguably going to be the best quarterback in franchise history right now. A great team. A lot of expectations, though, but a lot of Buffalo Bills fans are also Yankee fans. So hopefully they don't get into that Yankee mentality that I could see matriculating based on what I saw there. What I do want to ask you about the nitty-gritty of this game, and it was one decision by Mike Tomlin. He always tells us not to live in your fears. You live in your fears, you're going to eventually die by those fears. It's a big adage he's been saying for years. There was one moment in this game that he kind of did live in his fears, but I actually don't mind it, where he chose to kick that field goal, rely on Boswell, who's now continued to be money after that bad season a couple years ago, and not go for it, where I saw a lot on Twitter, people wanted him to go for it. We're saying that was too conservative, especially for a team with expectations. I liked him kicking that field goal. It was a close game. I didn't think the Bills were going to get going. If you end up with no points there, that changes the whole Bills scheme there in the 2-minute drill, where Josh Allen just needs to do it on one drive, one deep pass, they connect, and potentially they win the game or at least tie it. What are your thoughts on that decision? Because that's probably really the only decision from this game that people may criticize Tomlin, even though it ended up working out and the Steelers got the victory.
Yeah, no, I mean, in that situation where, you can even look at any of the first 2 field goals where, all right, it's down 10-0, you need points there right away. I'm actually going to get in my car real quick so I can avoid this win, and I'll keep talking to you.
You're good.
But no, I mean, when you look at the second field goal, yes, it's the second time that they were in the red zone. Sure. And, you would like to see them be able to tie the game there. That said, I mean, you pointed out already, Mike, where it's going to be a low scoring game. You take all the points that you can get in that situation. And especially if Buffalo does get the stop, then all of a sudden they've got a lot of momentum in their favor. So it's something that Pittsburgh just needed to do in terms of getting points. Yes, you don't want to see them struggle in the red zone, but points were needed. So yes, I can agree with the fact that kicking the field goal there was the right idea, was the right decision. Because if you don't get it, then Buffalo has a lot of momentum going their way. So that's one thing that I will say.
Imagine the reaction if the Steelers would have went for it and not ended up with any points there, and then the Bills ended up tying the game when you go in overtime and then lose. It would have totally flipped on the living in your fears comment, and the fans then would have attacked that way. So I do think living in your fears actually worked in that exact point there. Normally I'd like to go for it. And you like to see an offense get moving, and you like to see an offense air it out, and you like to see an offense not live in their fears. What do the Steelers need to do offensively? What do you want to see from Ben against the Raiders moving forward? Because the one facet of this team that you're going to leave this game where Mike Tomlin's probably going to go in the locker room and tell them it almost was a loss. They did enough, but that can't be the Steelers offense moving forward and expect to beat some good teams. Ben, not exactly gaudy numbers, did enough, didn't make incredible mistakes, but the offense just cannot take a half to really move the football. They could have been down easily 20-plus points at the end of that first half if the Bills had their timing down on those 2 deep passes.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that they need to do is just take more chances downfield. That was the complaint of everybody last year, is that, okay,
Right.
in this Randy Fichtner offense, it is so predictable and so easy to see where the ball is going to be going. And, these short to intermediate routes, if teams just start sitting on them, then the offense is absolutely stagnant. Yes, Matt Canada has put in, more pre-snap motion, more of that element into it. But aside from that, I mean, the offense, during, the live play, it looks relatively pretty similar with a lot of different screens, a lot of short to intermediate throws. Yes, we saw a few throws downfield to Claypool, one to Juju. But aside from the rare exception, it's just a lot of the same when it comes to the passing game. So, the Raiders are a team that don't exactly have a proven secondary. Pittsburgh can afford to take a few chances because I don't think that Vegas is as good a team as Buffalo.
Right.
So they can afford to take a few chances and try to open up that passing game. And if it starts working, then that'll just open up the offense as a whole. So I would just like to see them allow Ben to, uncork it a little bit and try to get big plays downfield, because, if you live in the short intermediate game, then it just becomes predictable. And once it gets slowed down, then the offense becomes stagnant. So hopefully next week they allow him to throw it, a little bit further, take some more chances to open up the offense as a whole.
Yeah, Ben in that first half did look 39 years old. So number 7 looked 39
Yes.
in that first half. Maybe it's the offensive play calling. Maybe it's him. Didn't look as old in that second half. The offensive play calling maybe opened up a little bit in that second half. Certainly led them to a victory. That's the most important thing. But a lot needs to still improve. And again, if that's the offense you bring to the table, then maybe the fans are valid. But it's the first year of Matt Canada being able to be the O coordinator. QB coach is a little different. So you got to give him time as well. I saw some jumping off the bandwagon already, one half of football. You got to give him time as well. And the Steelers really are lucky. They get a victory against a very good team, a contending team on the road without playing perfect, while they're still shaking the kinks off. So in the heart of hearts, the Steelers might have thought this potentially could be a loss as well, even though they're confident, and they weren't going to freak out about that. But now you have it as a win. So now you're kind of playing with house money. The Steelers winning it, as I said, 23-16 over the Bills on the road at Highmark Stadium, joined here by Jarrett Bailey of SISteelers and host of the Laces Out pod. Now, Jarrett, in terms of talking about the Raiders, what are some keys to that game against a now Vegas Raiders team? That's a Raiders team that I think is better than some people thought they would be from last year. They certainly were better than some would have thought last year. Not a team you can just totally sleep on like maybe in years past, but you would assume the Bills are better than the Raiders. So if you can beat the Bills, why not beat the Raiders at home? As we're mentioning, though, a lot still needs to improve. That we've known this from past Steeler teams. If they don't improve certain aspects, it wouldn't shock anybody probably if they would take this Bills victory and then lose to the Raiders if these still are problems. The Raiders are going to try deep passes as well. If they work their timing, and I'm sure Gruden, as we both know, I'm sure right now, once he looks at that film, is going to say, we're going to try some deep passes, because if they had their timing, that's 2 TDs they would have won. Whereas maybe we catch 1 or 2 of them, we're going to try to catch them early, etc. A lot of work still needs to be done. But what are some keys for you in that game against the Raiders in the home opener?
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on it. They're gonna, Derek Carr, I believe, led the NFL in passes more than 20 yards last year. So they really let him unload, where kind of known as a check down guy, and they completely destroyed that narrative because they brought in guys like Henry Ruggs and John Brown last year just to really make this a track team offense. So
right.
They can't allow what happened early on in the first half, where if Josh Allen doesn't overthrow, I believe it was Emmanuel Sanders, then as a walk-in touchdown. So he got behind Trey Norwood and everybody in the secondary. That can't happen. When the Raiders are going to try that, especially with Henry Ruggs. So the defense just has to prevent the deep passing game. The offensive line's brand new, though, in Vegas, similar to what it is in Pittsburgh. So if TJ Watt, Melvin Ingram, Alex Highsmith and company can get, even remotely the same pressure that they did against a really good Buffalo offensive line, then it's going to be a bad week for Derek Carr. So if they get to Derek Carr and if they can contain any sort of deep passes, it should be a win. But, the Steelers in the Ben Roethlisberger era are historically not good against the Raiders. I believe Ben's only 2-5 in his career against the Raiders.
Right.
So for some reason, they're a team that's always had Pittsburgh's number in the past 2 decades. So again, don't sleep on them. because, anything can happen any given Sunday, but especially when it comes to Steelers Raiders, apparently, because this is a team that has had the Pittsburgh Steelers number in the past 2 decades. So, but no, if they get pressure on Derek Carr, if the offense can, like I said earlier, if the offense can kind of start taking more shots, open up the playbook a little bit more, and set up a more balanced attack where they're not completely relying on the pass game, then it should be a relatively easy Pittsburgh win. But start out there getting a groove, pass rush for some reason just can't quite get to Derek Carr. That could be a closer game. So, if they protect the ball, if they can open up the offense and get to Derek Carr, then it should be, a 2-0 start.
Should be. Certainly should be. Probably people have that game penciled as a victory, but they also probably had the Bills potentially penciled as a loss. So right now the Steelers, again, playing with house money early in the year. The Steelers coming off a 23-16 win on the road in Buffalo, a tough place to play in and outside the stadium. Beautiful sight to see fans there, but potentially from a Steelers perspective, also a beautiful sight to see those fans piling out of there with 2 minutes left. Ben, 18 for 32, 188, 1 touchdown, sacked a couple times, a QB rating of 83.9. Not the best of days, I guess, from a fantasy perspective, but those numbers aren't all that bad if they're going to end up getting the production they got from the defense and they get a little bit more on the ground and from the O-line. That's kind of more of the Ben that played in that first half last year when they were undefeated. Just don't make the mistakes. He doesn't have to go out there and try to be the MVP. Those days are over. Deontay Johnson, etc., able to get involved in this game, but certainly needs to stay healthy to continue that this year. And the Steelers getting a lot of help from their veterans with turnovers and with really just causing pressure and causing Josh Allen fits there offensively. That Bills team not able to really get going in that game. So, Jarrett, I definitely appreciate the time, man. We'll have to for sure have you back here on one of these post-game shows. And I know you got coverage over there also at SISteelers, and you guys are going to probably do a podcast too. Again, throw this in the face of your co-host, as we're getting a lot of that here from the comments here on this Facebook page. Not too many questions here on this page. It's mostly just celebrating the Steelers' victory. You're waiting a whole year for this, probably figuring maybe this would be a tough road, and the Steelers do get the win. Not the end of the world for the Bills just yet, but a big win again, house money for the Steelers to start things off 1-0 to kick off the 2021 season. So, Jared, I definitely appreciate the time. Have a great rest of your night, man.
You do the same, mate.
All right, Jarrett Bailey again from SISteelers and also co-host of the Laces Out pod. As I will hang here a little bit longer to see if I get any questions and comments. But again, the Steelers win it 23-16. Ben, good enough at the end. Wasn't great. The offense did not get going in the first half. You don't need to jump off the bandwagon just yet, of course. Matt Canada's offense, very, very hard to learn. Very, very hard to administer. It does take growing pains. You didn't get to see Najee Harris explode. That will eventually happen. He will make up for the O-line. But, of course, the O-line needs to also be much better to make it easier on Ben and to make it possible for Najee Harris to be that offensive rookie of the year that some are hoping he would be. Deontay Johnson needs to stay healthy. For me, I said this on Twitter. I've said this months ago. I've been saying it all along that Deontay Johnson, for me, screams the ability to be a number one receiver in this league. Did push-ups in the offseason when he would drop passes. You fix that. He gets healthier. He stays healthy, and he can be that guy. Ben clearly relies on him, but already had an injury issue in this first game, leaving the game briefly, then returning and playing well. So that's something that, of course, needs to be something that is not a problem for the Steelers, despite having depth at receiver. We saw James Washington emerge and do it big there, win in. That's why they didn't trade him. They need to rely on him for potentially that role. Chase Claypool didn't get involved early. You got to get him more involved early in game. Juju laying out some key blocks in there, even though certainly not able to dominate in the game by any means. I don't think he's a true one anyway, so that's kind of what you get from Juju in the slot. If he can be that guy and be happy being that guy, he certainly has a role and can help this team this season. And then that defense stepping up. That defense caused fits for Josh Allen. The two keys for the Steelers to win this game against the Bills entering the game, and again, I didn't think the Steelers would win it, take advantage of mistakes by the Bills and prevent the Bills offense from really clicking and getting going. That Bills offense never got going. They missed those two deep passes in that first half. Otherwise, they certainly would have made this game potentially a problem and potentially over early on, as they could have had a 2, 3, 4 touchdown lead at the end of that first half if they would have connected on some of those and got going. And then they took advantage. The Steelers took advantage of those mistakes and those turnovers in that second half. Definitely keys to the game for sure. Boswell was able to convert some clutch kicks. Those days of him missing money kicks are over, clearly. They're long gone. So the Steelers did what they had to do. It wasn't pretty. It was maybe even ugly at times, but it was good enough. Mike Tomlin will certainly tell you that. The standard is the standard, or whatever the hell that means, but it was enough of a standard to beat the Buffalo Bills, as the Bills now need to work on some things. They need to shake off the Kings. They're still going to be a contender, though. They're going to be fine in that respect. But the Steelers now come back to Pittsburgh, a home opener against a favorable opponent. You would imagine a team worse than the Bills. They then have Cincinnati coming up. You would think a team that, despite Joe Burrow playing so well against the Vikings, he is still a rookie. They should feast on a rookie. That's a Bills team that is not nearly as deep as the Steelers. You imagine that to be a favorable matchup. I thought Buffalo would be a loss, but now the Steelers absolutely have a chance here at 3-0 headed to Green Bay. That'll be a good team, obviously, because of Rodgers if they cut down the drama, but the Steelers certainly will have a chance there if they can fix what they did wrong in this game against Buffalo. And I will tell you, full disclosure, if you didn't see it on the site, if you didn't see it on Twitter, if you didn't see it elsewhere, I had the Steelers 9-8 this year fighting for a wild card, okay? They already got one more win than I thought they would get. They're already ahead of that pace for me, as I thought they would be 0-1 against Buffalo. So maybe they swing that to 10, 11 wins. If they do that, that certainly secures the postseason. Maybe it wins the division with the issues for Baltimore and their running backs, and that being how they administer their offense. And then the Browns, certainly the favorite. They look good. They got depth. They got a better roster than even last year. But who knows? They could fall off, and potentially maybe the hype train can crash. So, again, you don't know. The Steelers certainly will be in there to have a punter's chance, and especially after this win. Again, keep it here on this Facebook page throughout the week. Keep liking, keep subscribing, keep being active on this Facebook page. We definitely appreciate it here. This is why I went live here at least once this year, because we have so much action on a daily basis here on the Steelers Now Facebook page. Head over to the YouTube channel, though, where I will get this show over there. Feel free to like and subscribe that YouTube channel. It's free to do so, as you get all of our content immediately when it's released there throughout our full network of sites. And also go to SteelersNow.com for all our post-game coverage, including post-game press conferences, which will also live here on the Pittsburgh Sports Live YouTube channel. And all of that will, again, be linked up and be active here on the Facebook page as well. The Steelers do win it 23-16. It was not pretty by any means, but the Steelers now start the season 1-0, and that is the most important thing, certainly from a Steelers perspective. Also find us on social at PGH Sports Live, at PGH Sports Live here for Pittsburgh Sports Live on YouTube, and at PGH Steelers Now for the site on Twitter. I'm at Mike Asti 11 over there on Twitter, by the way. The Steelers win it 23-16 on the road in Buffalo. They shocked the Bills Nation a little bit there. Bills Mafia leaves disappointed. They powerbomb Steelers fans to open things up, and then they get powerbombed throughout the game and leave the game with the loss. The Steelers now start 1-0. I'll be in Heinz Field with coverage there for the home opener against the Raiders. It'll certainly be an interesting affair. The Steelers will be favored. So now it's house money for Pittsburgh to keep the winning going, to fix what went wrong, because don't feel too confident. They won, but a lot still went wrong against the Bills. And it's a harder schedule, but a chance for 2 3-0 potentially, as then big games will churn.